Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have this opportunity to interview multi-sensitive Tracee Dunblazier, who is a spiritual empath, a shaman, an educator, and a spiritual counselor. Tracee's specialties include soul retrieval, past life history, shamanic healing, mediumship, grief counseling, intuitive counseling, addiction transformation, space clearings, relationships, transition strategy, and multidimensional understanding, which means to look at a situation from different viewpoints to grasp aspects of the situation beyond a limited perspective. Tracee was born with a profound innate awareness of the spiritual world and deep compassion for all who hurt. She lives with the intention of transformation and growth, both spiritually and emotionally. And she creates unique healing plans for each of her clients by blending the information she receives intuitively with different healing modalities. Her sessions are focused on freeing clients from their presenting issues to release, empower, and heal, no matter what the condition, with a compassionate, humorous, and down-to-earth style that supports and empowers her clients as their tender topics are addressed. Tracee, who is based in Los Angeles, California, is an 8-time national award-winning author, and she has been a guest on many prominent television and radio programs. Her most recent book, which is a definitive guidebook for reshaping feelings around grief, is titled Transformative Grief, an Ancient Ritual for Healing in Modern Times. And her many published articles also cover subjects related to spirituality and grief. Tracee holds workshops throughout the year, providing mentoring programs that teach spiritual development and energy dynamics to both the novice for self-healing and the professional practitioner. As those of you who follow Grief and Rebirth podcast well know, the mission of this podcast is to educate, enlighten, and provide healing choices that can transform lives. I'm looking forward to having Tracee educate us and enlighten us about questions such as, what is soul retrieval? And what is transformative grief? And reveal the many ways she is a dynamic healing resource, guiding and supporting people on their healing journeys as they release, empower, and transform their lives. This will surely be a memorable and enlightening interview with the highly gifted, compassionate, and down-to-earth Tracee. Hi, Tracee. A warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you so much. It's really, really wonderful to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here and get to know you. That's one of the perks of this podcast. I'm meeting the most wonderful people.
Yes.
And
yes,
I know here you are.
Oh. I brought one of my friends. It's a double terminated quartz that is going to be here with us today.
Oh,
too.
That's a blessing. That's wonderful. We'll take it. We'll take it. So let's, you're so amazing and you have this incredible, you were born so gifted and all. So let's start from the beginning. So what was it like to be an empath during your formative years? And what were those recurring nightmares that began when you were in your crib? My goodness, it's hard enough to be a little infant, let alone,
Right. It was powerful. I felt deeply connected to everything but people. I connect to people, but I knew that I was getting information, or I had experiences that other people weren't having. And so there was always this sense of isolation but I was also born with a sense of, a desire for leadership, a desire for healing, not only for myself, but for other people. So I think that helped me easily bridge that gap. But basically what it looked like is I grieved all night, and then, put on a mask all day. And I don't know that I felt like myself, because I think there were so many, I was born multi-spirited. And what that means is I had multiple different souls attached to my spirit.
Oh my goodness.
In addition to the memories of many spiritual traumas. And so that's what we call the multidimensional world. So you've got all of these other things going on that only I'm aware of. Other people can perceive it. They see it in how I interacted, how I spoke. Maybe sometimes I'd say something that didn't necessarily match being a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, right? And so there was inklings, if somebody was paying attention, that there was more going on than just me being present. So I navigated that, and I navigated.
How did your parents handle that? And did you have siblings who were not as gifted as you?
In my family, the multidimensional world was looked at as mental illness. And so I never told anybody. Everybody in my family was highly intuitive, but my grandfather had died in an asylum long before I was born, like 10 years before I was born. So it wasn't something that we talked about or we shared. It just wasn't appropriate, if you will. Like, it wasn't safe. Let me say that. And not that any of them, like, everybody's always supported me to the degree at which they could. And my father, had he lived, he died when I was 12. But had he lived, I think he was the one person in the family that had a deeper understanding of the multidimensional world, and at least he had a belief system that supported it.
Wow, that's so interesting. And let me ask you another thing. I know about this because I've experienced it through other healers who I know, that sometimes more than one soul attaches itself to a body, but sometimes that can really not be so great for the person. So did you
Absolutely.
get some of those souls? Have they left you, or are you still working with them? And why do you think that you had so many souls wanting to be housed in your being?
Well, because it was my karma for, so I had, in this lifetime, I came in, like, my grand purpose for myself was to heal, will illustrated as thousands of years of trauma.
So you chose to take on a lot when you were coming in.
I did. I wanted to do it all in one foul swoop.
You're
I
a
did.
high achieving soul.
Yes, I'm a very high achieving soul. I'm not. So this life has been about grieving, and grieving was the process of accessing all of that spiritual information and the stories and the dreams and the visions and the soul retrievals and past life recalls, all of the things that I experienced, that I brought members of my ancestral family with me. I had multiple guides with me.
Wow.
I had a husband that he and I had died one after the other together. So he was with me.
Wow.
So I had this posse that multi in every ethnicity on the planet. So it allowed me to see everyone as I see myself.
Did some of those souls leave over time, or are they still all with you?
They all left in the way in which I brought them in. The interesting story, I was 35 years old and I was watching Oprah. And BB and CeCe Winans were on the show that day, and they started singing this song, and all of a sudden I just felt the last lady lift up off of me.
Wow.
And of course I bawled for an hour or two, just it wasn't out of distress, it was out of awe and the profound shift in how I now saw myself with the absence of that final spirit was really potent for me.
Wow, that's quite amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Oprah is known to create miracles, but that was above and beyond.
Exactly,
Literally.
yes.
Were all of your gifts, were you born with all your gifts, or did you develop more? Did you study them? I know that you teach other people how to use their gifts.
do.
So Did you do that with others, or were you were full blown gifted with everything when you came in?
So I already had all of these gifts within me. I think as a human being, as I developed and as I was better able to manage certain experiences, I developed them for the sake of others. Let me put it that way. And what that means is it was a process of coming out to expressing what these things were, how they worked, what they were for me, trusting myself in front of other people, right? So as a child, I had all this understanding already. But every time I would voice something, as a young person, nobody wants to see a know-it-all 12-year-old. Nobody wants that.
Not only that, she's saying a lot of stuff that they don't know anything about, and they don't necessarily agree with either.
Right, exactly. It can be frightening, and yeah. So I learned very early on that I was going to pick and choose my battles. Let me say that, which I did. I picked and I chose quite a few of them, but certainly not all of them. And when I lived in New York for a long time, and so having the internal awakening, the external awakening in New York, for me, it was very visceral and instinctual. And I would have, dreams. It was more in my subliminal. So when I came to Los Angeles, that was the time that I became ultra clairvoyant, ultra clairaudient.
Wow. How old were you when you came to Los Angeles?
I was 27.
Okay, so early
27 or
on.
28.
Early
Yeah.
on, the stuff cooked in. And
yes,
I want everyone to understand that as we talk, there are a lot of things people don't understand. You do so many things. So I just want to ask you, how did the soul retrieval part start? Were you able to do that right from the very beginning, or was this something that developed once you got to Los Angeles? And could you explain to them what a soul retrieval is? I've witnessed this, but I'm sure a lot of people don't know anything about that.
So the concept is that with every trauma, every traumatic experience that we have, we often leave a part of our spirit in that place and time. For example, I had first when I first started working as a psychic. Now, I had always been the way that I am, but like I said, coming out to other people and participating was a whole other relationship to it. And a woman had come to me. She asked me if I did hypnosis and could I help her with stopping smoking. She had been smoking for 20 years. So I said, well, I don't do hypnosis, but I do past life information and soul retrieval. So let's go back in time and see what prompted you taking that first cigarette. And we went back in time and space to a point at which she had been raped when she was 18 years old.
And another lifetime.
No, it was in this lifetime.
In this lifetime.
She had been raped, and she had separated from her friends, met somebody new. He walked her away from her group of people in some alley and raped her. And then after that experience, she came back to her group of people and was, in shock and couldn't say anything and couldn't do anything. And so she started smoking. She had her first cigarette in that moment. So what we did is I took her back, and we took her soul back. We took her power back from that period of time. And we, on a spiritual and emotional level, she was able to confront her attacker pull her energy and power back from him.
So you helped her retrieve her soul from him.
From him,
parts
and
of her soul.
And space.
And
yes,
and you received the information about her past life, or you were able to get her to bring that forth?
No, it's similar to a process of a regression, but it's much more simplified, and actually today it's much easier than doing a full-on regression. But basically, I took her back. We asked her spirit to lead us, to allow her to visualize the first time she had a cigarette and what happened just before that. Like, what was the thing that prompted the desire to smoke? And so once she acknowledged that, she was able to grieve really for the first time. And while she had told people over the years, this is 20 years now that this woman has lived in this suffering, and choked it back with the smoke. So once she was able to just be back in those moments herself and feel free to grieve and take her power back from that person. sometimes in the multidimensional world, what is unprocessed, even if it's from our past, remains in our present. It remains in our spirit, in our energy, waiting to be processed. And processing it means that we go in with a new consciousness of power and empowerment. In that situation, we went back and she walked away from him. Instead of walking with him, she walked away from him, right? And just that simple action of, in that time and space, pulling her energy back and not going through that, let her have a do-over that she couldn't in this realm. And don't get me wrong, you know, I'm also I hate the word survivor of rape, but I am a rape survivor myself. And so there are multiple levels, right? You have to deal with what happened, how it happened, that it's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. They're the perpetrator. But as you process your mental, your emotional, ultimately, when you get back to your spiritual level, it's valuable that you recognize what was the pattern in place that left you vulnerable. Because if you don't see you, not anybody else, this is not about blame, you ultimately need to see the pattern in place. A pattern could be having a sense of a bad feeling but not following it, being overexcited, and sometimes we meet people and we give them a job, like, oh, maybe this person is going to like me, or maybe they'll take me out, or maybe, you know, maybe these good things will happen, right? And so we're in our desire of what we want to happen and not in the reality of what's possible, all leading back to our own intuition. So it's a learning experience. And so at this point, once you've grieved and you've acknowledged and you've spoken and you've gone through this process, then you can go back spiritually, which means we visualize, we go back into that time and space, we call on it, and we take our power back in whatever way we do.
That's really wonderful. And let me ask you something, because I know you know the answer to this. I'm pretty sure you know the answer to this. So this creep who raped her,
Yes.
with all of his history and his baggage and all the things that brought him to that moment, he gets to the other side and he gets to live that, right? He gets that in a life review, right? So is that how that works? And then eventually he heals on the other side and hopefully eliminates that pattern in his behavior. How does that work?
So that's what we call karma. Karma is the repetitions or the patterns that we create through our own actions. And everything that you said is true, but not necessarily in one lifetime. It might take, like, somebody might die and be in stasis, not learn anything, reincarnate, continue with the same, up until eventually they are going to know and understand the pain they caused. And when they can know and understand the pain they caused, then they can, on a deeper level, be able to witness the person that they were that created that pattern that led them to this outcome.
And that's
right?
a choice for them, right? About healing and where they go with it also, right?
Yeah, so on a grander level, yes, it's definitely a choice. Meaning it is our soul's purpose to understand our impact on ourselves and others.
Right.
At some point.
I mean, there are healing spaces on the other side also, right? So a soul like that could choose to heal.
It's all healing. No matter, you know, you had mentioned a quote earlier. You can't really understand what it means to be right until you've been wrong. And not until you've been wronged, but until you yourself have made a mistake that has hurt somebody in a way that maybe you yourself couldn't conceive of. Right? We don't really understand things until we really know and have experienced those things. So for me personally, my karma, this profound series of awakenings and grief and things that I've experienced in this lifetime was, you know, thousands of years in the making. And I'd experienced extreme spiritual trauma, which led to extreme addictive behavior, right? Escapism. wanting to hurt others, wanting to protect myself, using fear as a weapon rather than love, right? There's all these things that we do over time and space.
You
All
can
these
kind of
people
see that in the world now. You can kind of see people who are using fear instead of love and people who are doing that.
yes, yes, exactly. And so I, having had all of these experiences, I chose to bring with me the memories of the most potent ones when I put others in a position to do for me what I was unable or unwilling to do for myself. And in this lifetime, I had to own that and do for myself, and then serve those who couldn't yet do for themselves.
Wow, that's
And then
interesting.
right? And then I had a choice. Am I going to give a fish or teach them to fish, right? Am I going to do it for them or show them ways of doing it?
Well, don't you have a healing program also that helps to free people from their presenting issues? So you
I
have a
do.
regular thing how does that work?
So it's called Living Radical Acceptance, and it's a membership program that when people are engaged every week, when people are engaged, I come on and I do lives. We do every other week. We do lives where I will take questions. We'll talk about things. It's also an opportunity to get insights and information that I put out earlier than the regular public. And you also get a discount on my sessions and all the products that I sell, the books and decks and other tools that I sell.
Oh, well,
And
and
it's a way to have a community.
that's great. That's wonderful. I think it's very must be very comforting for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I need also for you to explain to everyone because we're talking about physical trauma when we're raped or all these awful things happen to us physically, but there's also something you call spiritual trauma.
Right.
And you say we need to heal spiritual trauma to create what you call magic in our lives. Can you educate us a little bit
Yes.
about that, Tracee?
Well, so when rape is not about the physical act, rape is about the psychological and emotional and spiritual relationship to control and power. So a rape rarely is a person hurt, as sometimes when people aren't hurt physically, some are, even if a person hasn't really been deeply hurt or victimized on a physical level, they have been victimized on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And those are the levels that ultimate healing has to take place. We can survive any physical trauma that happens, but it is the mental, emotional, and spiritual traumas that linger and are carried from life to life to life if we are unable to grieve and confront our attacker. If the attacker or the person isn't available to confront, you've got to confront that on a spiritual level, or you then cultivate other patterns like fear. Like somebody who has, the majority of rapes that happen are usually by partners, domestic partners, or date rape. Like people know, you have an acquaintance rape. You know this person, and then the rape takes place. Rarely are they anonymous or where people don't know. That's, I mean, as far as the all the numbers, the statistics go, that's the lesser. When that happens for somebody, they are left with this void of this face, of this energy, of this person that exists out in the world that they don't know where they are. And so there is a spiritual, in the spirit realm, there's a place in their psyche that they take with them, the possibility that every person they come upon in the world, maybe the person sitting at the next table, or sitting at the doctor's office, or at the DMV, or at the grocery, right? You sense those things, and you can even recognize oftentimes people who are criminals have a similar vibration. They all vibrate similarly. It's a frequency that you can sense and feel. And so and that's not a visual thing, that's an energetic thing. You feel it in your heart or in your stomach.
And part of that is people need to be encouraged and supported to honor those feelings, because I think a lot of us are brought up to keep
Yes.
our emotions in the or our intuition in the background, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So all of these modalities of healing, even just speaking of your trauma and your experience and breaking it down, telling that story frees you from being locked into this one vibrational pattern that is the only thing that you recognize, that doesn't leave you empowered in it. Right? So when we talk about, to answer your question directly, to heal spiritual trauma, a spiritual trauma is all of the traumas that we may have experienced at any other time that is left in our mental, emotional, and spiritual faculties.
From past lives, present life, and everything.
Exactly.
So you just made a comment about our vibration, which you say our inner world creates our outer world. So you're saying, so you help people heal their spiritual trauma so that they get some of that debris out of their inner world, right? Which frees them. So I want to ask you, how are our relationships mirrors to our souls?
Well, so when you talk about a mirror to your soul, you're speaking of many elements. One is vibration. Everything that we do, everything that we think, say, feel, has a frequency that it moves at. And that frequencies match each other. So we could be in a fairly joyful place, but we walk into a group of angry people and we get sucked into, yeah, I remember when right? We dredge up anything that allows us to be in that group of people and match the frequency that's there. That happens on every level, positive and negative.
And when you're not in that frequency, that's when you get pushback, because people can feel that you're very different, and they will have all their reactions to that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's frequency is the energetic way we all communicate before we see each other, before we speak with one another. So we're recognizing people's energy. And when we talk about a higher frequency, that doesn't mean better. It means more at ease, more relaxed, more peaceful, more graceful, flowing, right? A lower frequency is dense and could be sluggish or
Angry,
moving at a lesser pace.
right?
Right.
Or perhaps very angry, or
right.
Right.
Absolutely. But I think that my point in saying that is I try to take it, when you deal with frequency, people like, oh, you should just be at a higher frequency, or I've got such a high vibration. And I want to take people out of that punishment and reward thinking. We all at times feel angry and are in that density. Our spirit slows to a point at which we can look at and recognize what we are shutting ourselves off from that is making us angry. Like what we're not getting. That anger is purposeful, right? But once you gain that information, then you've got your next level is to let that anger go and move into grief. Grief is flowing and will take you to the next level of understanding, which is joy, right? Joy isn't necessarily happiness. It's intrigue, it's curiosity, it's interesting, it's fun, right? It's the thing that drives you into the next moment to learn more stuff.
It's engagement. It's expanding. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So when you talk about mirroring, when you meet people, the first thing that you're going to see in somebody else is something that you're learning to accept in yourself, or something that you love about yourself but don't necessarily acknowledge, but you can see it in them and love it in them, right? So 95% of our relationships is about that self-exploration that we have when we meet new people.
Well, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you also talk about that catastrophes serve to master who we are. Can you explain that concept to us also?
Yes.
You have such a deep level of understanding for these things, Tracee. It's great.
So catastrophes are related to chaos, and chaos is an energy that breaks things apart so that we can discern what parts we want to bring forward with us to create our new experience, our new life, our new house, right? So all of these huge physical world tragedies, these big weather events. Annihilation is happening. And if you survive that annihilation, spirit is offering you the opportunity to rebuild in a new way with an open heart. Right? Sometimes we're put in situations and we are forced to grieve. Like the burden is so big that we can't help but to allow it to just sink through us. And it is that process of grieving that opens our heart to, you know what, I'm gonna spend my time with the people who share my values, or I'm gonna stop, hoping that people like me and not care if they like me, and let the ones who really like me move my way. Right? I'm gonna stop doing certain things, and I'm gonna start putting my energy and focus where it brings me joy, because now I have an understanding that time is not given. Time can be short. Right? We have events that show us a different relationship to linear time. And when that happens, it also opens us up to an expression or understanding of who we are on the inside. Like where our life is vast is our spiritual worlds, our limitless spiritual worlds.
That's really fabulous. And I want to also ask you, okay, so we're talking about catastrophes and people are grieving, and they are it's giving them the chance to open and expand more instead of contract. But as they're grieving and things have been perpetrated on them that they're grieving, you say that forgiveness is the process of, which was really interesting, the process of becoming neutral after a trauma has taken place. And does forgiving mean forgetting? So can you explain to people, because they say, how can I forgive when this was done to me? And they're
Yes.
holding on to
Right.
what happened. So
Right.
can you educate us about that, Tracee?
I hope that I can. So when people stay, forgiveness is another word that means to make even. Right? So if you've been traumatized, if you've been hurt, if you've been perpetrated on in any way, shape, or form, there's a process that you have to go through that brings you into another level of understanding. What does that mean? That means that if something's happened, when I was raped, I lived 10 years in rage. I was mad, and I lived as mad as I wanted to be. I was in New York City. In New York City, you can be as mad as you want and people just accept you. And I was so grateful for that. But there was a point at which I recognized that all of that rage and anger, while it might have protected me from, would-be criminals, it hurt me. It kept me locked into only certain kinds of relationships with other people, because nobody wants to be around a person who is angry all the time, even if they understand why you're in such pain.
And I'll bet everyone listening to this can relate to that. They know
right?
people who are always angry, and they go, what is with
Oh my
them?
God. It's like, yeah, we share energy when we are around others. And so if I put my burden on a lot of people, and I have in my life allowed a lot of people to put their burdens on me. I feel like it's even, but there comes a time when you recognize that you can be self-sufficient, that you don't need others to help you process your burden, and that you can grieve your burden away. When you grieve, it literally transforms that energy. And so when we're angry, eventually our anger is going to give way to grief. And when we grieve, we transform all of that energy. And it changes the lens that we look at life through. We begin to recognize that there is a world outside of just our 3D and 4D experience, which is our physical and our emotional selves. We recognize that there are sometimes we recognize there are other beings. Maybe we are awakened to the idea of a greater purpose or a higher life form, whatever, however you want to see it. But as we begin to do that, we then recognize love. And there was a point, I literally had 1 year of my life that I was living in Harlem, 111th and 8th Street, 111th and 8th Avenue. And the neighborhood had been regentrifying for quite some time, but this one year I was in transition. I was waiting on tables. I had a bunch of jobs that I was tired of doing. I wanted to do more. I knew I could do more. I didn't. I was tired from being so angry all the time. And wouldn't you know, these dudes on the corner, every night they would chase me into my house. They never hurt me, but they would see me. They see the cab coming.
Here she comes. Here comes our little victim.
Exactly, 2 in the morning, and they were like,
right,
and knocking on the door, and
oh my gosh,
terrified me. And that's when I realized, wow, I'm too tired to stay angry. If I had still been angry, I would have confronted them. But I was too tired for that. I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to be a loving person, and I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to be in a safe space to be a loving person. And so in that year, I actually decided to go to LA instead. Like my experiences were kind of drying up there, and I needed something new. I didn't want to go to LA, didn't like LA, didn't like the thought of LA, but it seemed to be the only place that was calling to me.
And why would you think that was?
Why LA?
Yeah.
Well, because in New York, once you walk out of your building, you are in it all day. You are forced to deal with people, and you pretty much have to do that all the time. And especially in the years that I was there, we didn't have the delivery systems and all the ways that we now can isolate ourselves.
And you're sensitive, so you're barraged with all this energy the minute you walk out of your building, right?
Absolutely. So when I came to Los Angeles is an epic place. It is the city of angels. People at first were awful. Very passive aggressive, very self-centered, all the things that you would think. And again, this is not who all the people are in LA, but it's how I experienced it, because I loved the honesty and the truth of New York. So coming here, LA isolated me to the point at which I had to find the honesty and truth in myself. And that is when I had to start really digging into my own soul journeys, resurrecting a lot of these dreams that I'd had since childhood.
Some of those nightmares.
Yes, all those nightmares that I'd had, I started to work through them. I started to ask what their source was, what the purpose was, what is the story behind this. And
now you did this work on your own, or did you see other people to help you also, or you were able to get this with all your gifts for yourself?
Both. Mostly I did it myself, and it came through after deep bouts of grief. I have many spiritual guides, like literally energetic, otherworldly beings, people that speak through me. The animals speak to me a lot. And I did have a short circle of people who were also psychic, who were older than me, who could, give me a pat and tell me it was all going to be okay. And occasionally help me talk through some things that allowed me to begin my process of the gift of speaking about these things that are communicated to me. Because I think in all the things that I do, like that I think is my real forte, is to be able to explain a concept in a way someone can receive it. At least that's my goal.
That's what I'm experiencing right now. That's
Good.
Great. So let me ask you, all that you're talking about is really about transformative grief. And
yes.
Transformative Grief is the remarkable grief guide that you just wrote. It's titled Transformative Grief, an Ancient Ritual of Healing for Modern Times. So tell us about what inspired you to write this gift guide, and the different kinds of grief a person can experience in a lifetime, and anything else you'd like to share with us about it's a very healing, transformative book. So tell us all about that.
So, well, first of all, I'm going to show your people who are watching the cover. They did such a beautiful cover for this.
Oh my gosh, how gorgeous.
It's a person falling into the ocean. And that literally is how it feels like when the wave of grief comes, it's like boom, and then I'm on the floor, I'm on my knees on the floor wailing.
I can relate to that. Absolutely.
Yes. And it also reminded me of the first Jaws movie, how it opens where the woman's swimming in the ocean. And I don't know, that image has always been too much for me. Like that has been like, that was one of the symbols that at age 4 or 5 or whatever it was, gave me an inclination of who I am, because the ocean is so vast, and ocean, the symbology of an ocean or water is emotions. And it was one of the foretelling symbols for me of finding out who I am. So Transformative Grief, the book, came out of 50 years of grieving, and being able to grieve so much and so often that I recognize that there is a distinct process of learning and transformation and development that it takes us through. It's not, we don't have to learn to do it. It's going to take us through that process.
Now, it's still a choice though, Tracee, isn't it? Because some people stay stuck in their grief and they never move forward through it. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'm going to say no, and this is why.
Okay.
As a witness to somebody else's grief, we only see a slice of what we witness or what they tell us about their grief. I grieved in 50 years the trauma I experienced over thousands of years. So a person is going to, when we say a person is going to grieve in their own way and in their own time, that's what we're never stuck. We may be in stasis, we may be in rest and repose, we may be in rage and anger, because our anger makes us hypervigilant, and it makes us pay attention to details that we wouldn't have otherwise done that. And we could stay in I mean, I was rageful. I had a lot to rage about. The rape that I experienced was just the tip of the iceberg for me of the spiritual traumas that I had experienced. So I stayed in rage for a solid 10 years, and that was actively working on it. So, and I know my friends all felt exactly that way, like, oh my God, would you please just get through this? But at the end of the day,
so in their minds, you weren't moving forward, but in your way, you were.
absolutely. A person, I'm going to say this to everybody out there, you are the only person who can discern what you need and how you need it. And the biggest favor you can do for yourself and for your friends and loved ones is let them off the hook. Say, let me be where I'm at, and you don't have to do anything to help me. Right? Your process, like books fell out of shelves for me at bookstores. Right? One time I was on the subway. It was the downtown express. I think it's the number 2 line. And this guy, who everybody would call him crazy or homeless or whatever, however we termed that guy at that time. I don't know his situation, but he walked up to me and he looked at me and he channeled for me. He gave me messages from my people. And I sat there and just cried while he talked to me for 30 minutes. And then I got off at West 4th Street. He stood up, we bowed at each other and left.
Wow.
And so your process is your process. And whether or not you know it, you have a group of people, you have a posse of people that are with you on every level that are pushing for you. And if you don't see them directly in your life, then pull your energy away from the people that are there and start being present to the messages that can come if you're open to them.
That's beautiful.
But be your own advocate.
That's great. And I want to also, excuse me, ask you also that I know transformative grief helps to reveal our spiritual purpose and truth, giving us access to our highest possibilities. So for those in our audience who are grieving, how does that work for them, that this can be a bridge to them to reveal a higher spiritual purpose in their lives? Well, I know that happened to me. I can personally attest to that, but
yes.
So there
is a science of grieving, of science of crying. When you cry for 10 minutes or more, it literally changes the neurons in the brain. You have neural circuitries that tell you how you believe and how you feel. And when you grieve, you are usually grieving something that the pain exists because the neural circuitry in your brain gives you a belief or ideal that is no longer current for your condition or experience. And so your brain has to change, and grief is the process that allows that or promotes that to happen. So when you grieve, you shift on every level: mental, emotional, spiritual, and cognizant, your brain level. So that's what is transformative. And when that happens, when you have a new lens and you look at the world differently, you're going to have to you have to relearn how to think about things. You know, when you have been betrayed in some way, you ultimately have to learn how to trust again. First, learning to trust yourself, then learning to trust each other. Right. And so we learn new cues. We expect new things from our environment and from the people in our lives. And do all of those activities will change us. It will reprogram our neural circuitry, and it will change how we feel, change how we think, and eventually create a new vibrational spin that will attract new and better things for us.
That's beautiful. And I also want to talk to you about something close to my heart. You talk about the importance of planning an end-of-life celebration.
Yes.
Tell us all about that, and then I'll throw in my little piece of that.
Well, so again, you know, one thing about transformative grief is when we think of grief in our modern culture, we still think of grief as what you do as it relates to death, dying, and extreme loss. We do not give you permission to grieve when the coffee maker breaks and you're late. Right? My biggest grief moments have come.
I can relate to that. I love that.
No. Yeah, the other day I was so frustrated. I was taking all these calls with all of the medical system, insurance, all of that stuff, and I was so aggravated.
Talk about rage. That's an experience.
Oh my God. I have these fabulous plastic tumblers that I got when I got a dog. And I was so mad. I took one of them. I looked around and I'm like, that, because I've been wanting to get rid of them anyway. So I took it, weaved it across, and it cracked. And I was like, great, now it can go in the trash. Fabulous. That was a twofer right there. But we don't give ourselves permission to recognize the little insults, mental, emotional, spiritual insults that happen all day long, that we don't give ourselves permission to recognize or feel. So at some point, I recommend that people do a ritual where at the end of every day or every like the middle of the week, sit and be mindful about all of those little insults that have happened, and give yourself permission to feel whatever you feel about them. Doing that is going to allow you, when bigger losses take place, to be more present in the moment and more fluid, so that you can grieve and participate and be present kind of all at the same time.
Right.
So having said that, ritual is my way of practicing that thing I seek to attain. And an end of life celebration is when you plan it yourself, it's your opportunity to share with people. You know, everyone has a certain image of you, but this is your opportunity to show them the you that you would like everybody to be left with. And it also gives people permission to be who they are and where they're at in the way that they need to, right? Funerals aren't just to be sad. You know, we have this thing that funerals are sad, and then memorials are, you know, there's a little more leeway there, but then there's an end of life celebration, and then you can really be yourself, right? But they're really all the same thing. So, you know, you decide, you know, if you've never sat down and written your own eulogy, that is something else, right? Because then you can really see how you think of yourself, but how you think other people see you. And it can be confronting, it can be enjoyable, but it's a great learning technique to recognize your mortality and recognize the, oops, sorry, cat fight here. I've got 2 kittens on my lap, and they
That's all right.
here.
I had a poodle in as part of an interview. Not a problem. Hi there.
This is my new kitten, Tijaba.
Hi, Tijaba.
She's a little Maine Coon, and she's almost 10 pounds, and she's 6 months
Oh,
old.
she's
Oh,
licking you. Oh, how
thank
sweet.
you, honey. I love you
Oh, how
too.
sweet.
Thank
Oh.
you. Your end of life celebration is the ritual that you plan for other people.
You know, I can relate to it because
you.
we were talking about it. I just planned an end of life celebration for myself. The first line that I want my son to read to everyone who will gather is, "Yay, I graduated." And I use it
Exactly.
as an opportunity to thank different people
Yes.
in my life and to tell them what they really meant to me. And some of them I can't say it now while we're all
Yes.
alive. So it's giving me the vehicle to, it's not about getting in the last word it's about saying what you need to say from your heart that they can't necessarily hear now, but you want them to hear it
Right.
at that time, and
You
how
know,
they contributed to your graduation.
right. When a person's heart is breaking, it is also the most open it will be. Right. That's how we graduate to new levels of thinking, comprehending, understanding, receiving energy, love.
Right. That's wonderful. Tracee, and why is it important to empower ourselves to heal in this lifetime? We're talking about tons of lifetimes. Why should people listening to this interview with you think about, gee, I've got some issues and all. I'm not going to let them go on and on and on. Maybe I have to address them now.
Well, because no matter who you are living on the planet right now, it is very disempowering. Meaning you can, if you watch the news, like there is so much conflict, and all of that conflict that exists is based in our own inner resistance to seeing the lightness and the magic and the power that we are as human beings, and then expressing that through caring for ourselves and others, and caring for the planet, and caring for the beings, the other creatures that live on the planet, and caring for the water. And this the thing that in the United States, you know, we, with all the colonialism and what it's this illusion that there's not enough for everyone. And we have a lot of things to reorder here. And the one place that you are going to have all the control is yourself, is your heart, is your healing. So start with any small little task, pick something for the year, and then work at it. You don't have to set a big goal. Just pick a theme of the year, and then work that theme. Do little things and accomplish them, and every step that empowers you. And the stronger you feel, the more powerful you will be in your milieu, right? In your group of people. They're going to see you, and that's your story, Irene.
That's right. That's absolutely my story. And
That's
it's about becoming a role model to other people.
Yes.
Because if I hadn't done my healing, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Right.
I would still be bogged down with all those issues. So speaking of, so I am an example of transformative grief. And speaking about that, tell us about your workshops. You have mentoring programs. You have energy dynamics for both the novice for self-healing and the professional practitioner. And I think you also have an offer for our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience today. So go for it, Trace. Tell us all about it.
I do. So you can go to my website at TraceeDunblazier.com.
Spell that for them, Tracee. D-U-N.
So Tracee is Tracee, and then Dunblazier is DUNBLAZIER.com. And I believe it's New Year 20. You can get 20% off all of the things in my shop from my website.
And we'll
it-
have a link to that, everybody. We'll have a
Yes.
link for all of you.
all of the physical items that you can purchase, you'll get 20% off of those if you buy them from me. I don't care if you want to buy them and get them with Prime or Barnes and Noble, you can buy them anywhere. But if you buy them from me, you can get 20% off with New Year 20. And I'm going to double check that, and we're going to put it in the
show notes and everything.
In the show notes. But I absolutely work with people. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I'll be at the Conscious Life Expo in February. We do INATs probably in July. There's a lot of different conferences that I do over the year. And then my new latest fun thing is these really exciting crystal cards.
Oh, cool.
It's a deck and a book. It's a set of 3 books and this altar card deck that you can begin to work with the gem and mineral kingdom for healing on every level, on every aspect of your life, relationships, managing resources, trauma. Crystals, as you can see, are my favorite. Anyway, so I do all kinds of work, and whatever it is that you need, I want to be able to be there for you. So you can reach out to me at TraceeDunblazier.com, send me a note, and we can start there.
Start there. And tell me, Tracee, tell everyone, how does living a grief-filled life bring us joy? Because that almost sounds like a non sequitur. It's like
it is, because again, that we it's okay to reframe grief. It's okay to so everyone knows when you have really had a good wailing session, crying, grieving, there is a peace that comes down and it takes you over, and it allows you in this profound calm to see things either as they are or the way they could be for you if you will do X. Like you gain these profound insights because A, you're relaxed, and second, you have let go of all of the anguish, and you're shifting your brain. So when you allow that, that peace that comes, I think, is the precursor to joy. It's joy is a way that we relate to things. It's not something that we get when we're happy. We can be miserable and be joyful. They can go hand in hand, right? We can still be curious about life. Good things can still happen even though you have experienced an enormous loss. And learning to embrace both worlds simultaneously is the skill set, I think, that we're talking about teaching to our culture today, is how to embrace that skill set and still love and enjoy life despite our losses, using our losses to propel us forward.
That's beautiful. Tracee, there is a very powerful quote from your wise and insightful book, Transformative Grief, an ancient ritual for healing in modern times, that I would like to share with our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience. Empowering yourself to heal is giving yourself permission to find out everything there is to know about you and your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical self. It is analyzing any self-pity you have to reveal what you must learn to do on your own. It is surrendering your feelings of isolation from a world you believe is against you and making your suffering unbearable. This frees you from your own self-criticism. Remember, you are like water. Even the largest mountains can be worn down in places to let the water pass. All situations have a remedy to their obstacle if you will stay focused on it by empowering yourself to heal. Thank you, Tracee, for the many ways you help people to achieve deep healing and for empowering them to create the success and peace they seek in their lives. And I thank you from my heart for this remarkable interview with you today that has surely inspired healing and transformation in many lives. And here is a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, especially YouTube. As I like to say, to be continued. Thank you, Tracee. Many
you.
blessings.
Thank you.
And bye for now. To be continued.